the key ideas that we see are that the brain learns what it practices with good feedback on improving, that practice. And so what that means in the classroom is rather than have a teacher stand up and tell things to the student, instead the teacher carefully designed problems that the student has to work with. It's optimize the learning if they work in small groups, 3 or 4 students, working through those problems with the teacher monitoring what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they're struggling with, and then regularly coming in and giving feedback then to guide them. They can ask questions, get everybody understand it, and then the student goes back to continuing working through the problem. And so this idea of the essential idea is practicing the thinking you want the learner to gain with guiding feedback as they're going through that process. They just have to start measuring what teaching methods their faculty are using and reward the ones who are doing it, doing a better job. I don't see anything wrong with evaluating research and research productivity. The problem is just they completely ignore teaching as if everything is equivalent or there isn't good teaching and bad teaching. Now we know there's clearly more effective teaching. That has to be part of the ranking systems in the same way that, universities both generate new knowledge. It's valuable to have faculty members who have the deepest understanding of the subject so they can convey that. They can teach it to students that same way. And so I think it's just the imbalance now, and we know enough now about what's good teaching, what's bad teaching, that it just has to be put in place, that you're really measuring and evaluating and rewarding and ranking on that basis. At this point, we don't really need more research. I mean, there's always opportunities for research, but we just need to have universities start paying attention to what teaching methods are being used. I mean, I like to use the analogy that, the way we're doing it now is equivalent to a hospital saying, well, some of our doctors are using bloodletting and some are using antibiotics, but we don't bother to measure what each of them are using. It's just up to their choice. And, it's crazy when one works so much better than the other. Yeah, I mean, what the science education initiative was, it was an experiment in trying to change an institution, trying to, at a large university, the department is really the key element. It decides what to teach and how to teach, whether it's, the physics department, the biology department, and so on. And so that was really an experiment on a scale no one had tried before. Could you change entire departments, how they teach, and change them to switch from their old traditional methods to these new, more effective methods? And so a whole lot went into the design and testing and results from that. I ended up writing a whole book on it. But the key ideas were we developed an incentive system for both the departments and the individual faculty, and to change their teaching, and then we developed support to help them understand, and it was important, not just what good teaching methods were, but what good teaching methods were and how you applied them to teaching the subject you would be needing to teach. And so they could, in that way, we developed the expertise in teaching in the discipline among the faculty and made that a standard within a department. I think the basic mission of universities is much the same as it's always been, which is, providing a higher education, the highest reasonable level of education that you can expect to provide to students. I guess it's much as society and our technology has changed, we need many more students to have this higher level of thinking capabilities. And one of the key things, I mean, nowadays is computers can do an awful lot, and computers are, and robots are replacing people for an awful lot of things. And so what's really now what a person provides is thinking capabilities that go beyond what you can easily get from a computer. So that means, doing menial labor. It means doing menial, routine calculations are not very valuable anymore because computers can do that. But so, what people uniquely can do now is make decisions. When you don't have all the information, you have to weigh a lot of different factors. And that's really what thinking like a scientist or an engineer is. And that's what we teach. That's what the methods I talk about, that's what they really are uniquely effective at teaching, is that kind of novel thinking capabilities involving making better decisions. And so I would say that's always been important for universities, but it's more important now. That dominates other kind of more routine things that might be learning, and that makes it all that much more important to adopt teaching methods that really are much more effective at developing those decision-making capabilities for students. If, I look at data, and if you look at data on MOOCs, particularly look at data on learning from MOOCs, it's pretty dismal. And so, I'm far from convinced that they're really very meaningful. I mean, maybe if you can't afford a textbook and you can look at something online, okay, then maybe the MOOC's better than nothing. But if your alternative is a real university experience where you're actually thinking and getting feedback and interacting with people to justify arguments, the data shows that's so much better than MOOCs. I have trouble taking them seriously, kind of as a replacement for a good university. I mean, I should say also, if you look at some of the data on MOOCs, and when people get excited, they always say, 150,000 students took this MOOC. Yeah, and then you look how many completed. Well, it was, half of 1%. If you go to a university here and said, well, yeah, I did a great job, half of 1% of my students were successful in completing the course, it'd just be just be ridiculous. But somehow people don't pay much attention to that, and then they never even look at the kind of real learning measures that I and people who do research like myself do. So anyway.